All right. So here's the purpose. Number one, how to get leadership results. Hopefully you'll get a few nuggets out of that. And the goal here was to share with you some of my research, some of the findings on followership, relatively new area in leadership, and then share with you what I consider to be some top secrets and skill solver sprints, some things that you can do in your regular job to help you expedite learning, move quicker, and solve some problems. So I'm going to ask you to do, let's see, does this thing, all right. Is that chat bar and is the bar in the middle of the screen for you guys or just me?
It's over on the side for me.
Okay, good. I just moved it. All right. So here's my ask of you. Hopefully you do want to get something out of this. So jot down as you go along things that you think you need to do, behaviors you need to change, action items you need to take. Just put it on your phone or write it on a notepad or something. And in about 30 minutes, I'm going to come back to you and just ask you to think about what's the top one of those things. And then we're going to move to that next section. Okay. So I'm going to go through a little bit on a learning model, which will help you if you've not been part of learning organizations before. And I'll go through this results framework that I've developed. Then we'll talk about followership. So give me about 15 minutes, then we'll get to followership. And then we'll finish with this leadership sprint activity. So this is out of the course that I teach, which is 12-hour course. I teach on 20 different leadership styles, theories, traits, and the items with check boxes are what I'm considering doing these series of webinars on. So I had eight to 10 people who were interested first time around. So we'll just see how it goes and may decide to continue to do these and focus on toxic leadership, servant leadership, communication and leadership styles. If there's something you'd like to see that's not on here, put that in the chat box and that would help me to consider moving forward. So I've got two focuses going forward here. One question you might have, well, is this, because I've been to a lot of webinars and most of them are pure sales. There's very little training. It's always an upsell. And I don't know if you guys have experienced that or not. But yes, this is about training instruction. So I'm going to do some of that, but it's also about problem solving and an improvement approach that I will share with you. So I'll share or hopefully impart a little bit of knowledge that will lead to some solutions. So based on what I think you guys want to see, and you told me that you didn't want to see anything specific, but here's what most people want to see in leadership training. A shot in the arm for you and your team to transform your organization, get some quick wins, make this applicable, and to work through solutions. And that's one thing I've seen in so much training is it's not applicable to real world and it doesn't address real leadership problems. How many, if you guys can put it in the chat, do you have any direct reports, any people reporting directly to you? Because that will kind of tailor how I'm going to talk to some of this. Because you may be a leader in your household or in your neighborhood and, 20 to 25 for D, Sherry with 4. Okay. Good. All right. So you are leaders that have direct reports. So good. Most training does not seem to address the applicability in real life. My goal is to help you with collaborating better, having your employees and your team have meaning, joy, and flow. When they have meaning and joy in their jobs, they're 50% more likely to be more productive. And I'll talk about this concept of flow. And then I want to provide this skill solver sprint process, which has just been crazy useful to me in my career. And hopefully you'll get it pretty quick that I like interactive, engaging, experiential. This is not how I would do a training online. I would have everybody with their face on the camera, we would be talking, we would have post-it notes, virtual, and we would have a lot of participation. And lastly, I hope to help you with some career advancement and financial success. My background is, I won't dwell on this, I've had 35 years in the corporate world. The average Fortune 500 company is 4 billion in revenue. I've led over 1,000 people and been director and senior director, senior managers, and an individual contributor. Also started some nonprofit ministries, and we started a school, my wife and I. So we've been down the entrepreneur path, and I've led all types of teams. On the learning experience, I just finished a 7-year PhD in leadership studies, so that brings a little distinctiveness to what I'm doing here. I've just finished up several podcasts with the international and worldwide leaders in research on leadership and followership. So if you're interested in going deeper, they're a lot smarter than I am. But I have access to those type of people, and I've done a lot of speaking and consulting work and written a few books. I've had a great year of travel, London, Athens, and Prague, speaking about leadership, some graduations, New York, Dallas, Chicago, and Denver. Um, won't tell you a whole bunch about, why I'm doing this, but my goal is to raise this servant leadership and followership to the forefront. It's been very little researched and very little executed, but the benefits are really there. And so what I want to do is to bring my scholarly research. I have a faith-based background that I'm not ashamed of. I won't go overboard on it, but I do have worldview principles that I believe are helpful to those leadership styles. And so I will integrate those and do so in my training. Not a slap over the head or anything intrusive. But so here's kind of what I'm trying to do is mixing the business, corporate, the goals, those type of things with education and then faith. All right. So a little bit of story here just to say that anybody can do this. Back when I was 31 years old, I started to have these incidents of blacking out and went to 10 doctors and they could not figure this out. And I was wondering, what in the heck am I going to do with my life at 30 years old, newly married, new kid? And nobody could figure out what was wrong with me. So I kept this case summary myself with every little problem that was going on, and finally found a solution. But it took me 6 months. I was flat on my back for 6 months out of work on long-term disability. And there was no wasted time. And that's my point here, is that even if you failed in leadership or you have challenges or struggles, there's no wasted time. I spent that whole year reading the Bible straight through about financial principles. And we had just finished getting out of debt in 5.5 years, including our mortgage, our 2 cars, a mobile home, $15,000 in credit cards. And so I wasn't qualified to write a book, but it just happened. And God really orchestrated some things. It's a long story, but I say all that just to say, please don't limit yourself by your failures and your sufferings, because there is a great plan for you. And so I won't go through my background too much, but I am excited to have a couple of these references. Jack Hayford was one of the leading pastors and founders in a movement. He passed away last year, but he called me out of the blue after he got a copy of my recent book and just said, "Hey, would you come talk to all my pastors?" So it's kind of fun out of the blue. And then my PhD program provost sent a glowing remark here too. So just to let you know, but this was probably my favorite. It's not so much the references that I can provide, but this testimonial from one of the first people who went through my class in January, late January, was Mario. And he said, "This thing literally transformed me. I delved deep into the principles of servant leadership." He's an IT guy, and he put this on LinkedIn without me asking him to or anything. And he said, "This class, these principles made a profound impact of connecting my heart and my soul in my leadership." And so he just walked through this change that had taken place. And in the next paragraph, he talked about these profound revelations really brought about this new partnership with God, who he thought, how can you, God's kind of separate from the marketplace and leadership and my team, but he discovered it wasn't. And he really very quickly experienced new dimensions, a sense of purpose and guidance. And so that was pretty cool. All right. So I want to see how many of you all, let me just make sure there's nobody in the waiting. Okay. Nobody there. Um, just in the chat, how many of you have been to a leadership training course, a class? Yes or no? Okay, so you're in between roles, Elena. Great. This is a great season to learn and just sit through as many webinars and training classes you can. YouTube is great to do that as well if you haven't done that. I've got a bunch of stuff on YouTube, but there's many folks as well. And so here's what I've found in as a teacher, as a professor, both at universities and in my corporate position is I'd come out of these classes and say that was way too long. And or this isn't going to help me in my job at all. Or as a profit and loss owner, we didn't have this in the budget and I surely didn't get my money's worth. How about bad teacher and worse content? Or I heard this a lot from my cohort members. That those are 2 days I can't get back. What a waste. I don't have time for this. I've got a desk full of stuff I could be doing. What a snooze fest. It was boring. And then for those introverts who say, I hate these classes because the extrovert teacher is going to call on me. How about this one? There's no new information. Got the t-shirt, done this. Get a big binder handout that you put on your shelf for years and never do anything about it. Too academic and made me feel like I was back in college and I hated school. Not sure why they chose that teacher. There was a knowledge gap for sure. And then done this, got the t-shirt. My favorite one was I was reading about a corporate training a couple weeks ago, and they had a blog that they sent around in a chat anonymously afterwards. The leader didn't see this, but it said AFP, AFP, AFP. And I didn't know what that was. And as I drilled down, what they meant was another fine program. This is yet another F bomb, is what they use. This is another effing program that corporate has flowed down, a new acronym and something else they're going to make me adopt. So lots of sarcasm. I've been there. That's the problem. So what I want to try and do here is to motivate and help you with experiential learning to get you to focus on that. I've got some research on followership, show you a framework or design that will help you solve some problems when you are a leader. And hopefully you can delegate more, free up more of your time, move down these leadership development curves quicker. That's one thing with Gen Z and the new hires is it takes so long to move them down the road. They're impatient. 60% of them are on the job hunt nonstop. And so how can you reduce those leadership development curves, to develop a collaborative culture with your teams, stir up excitement, energy, and hope? And then again, this tie back to doing your job when you're learning is immediately applying that learning. We learn more when we apply it, and we learn more when we teach it. If you use this stuff, and even if you're not working, Lane, even if you use this as in another setting within 15 days, you'll keep it in your knowledge bank forever. Improving job satisfaction, we'll talk about that, and then coming up with an approach to transform your workplace in 30 days. So the way we're going to do that is to teach you how to learn quickly, fix a problem quickly, use a process and a tool, set up some accountability, and then stir up passion and energy. So this leadership learning model that I developed through a lot of study is 3 steps. Number 1, it's what you think, what you're taught, what I'm teaching you, what you learn, and then what you do. This book, inspired by William Yunt, called Created to Learn, puts this first category squarely in instruction and equipping. So it's old school rote learning, just like I'm doing now. I'm just talking to you. You're either taking notes, multitasking, listening to another show on another channel. I know, I get it. But this is purely instruction, but I brought some research and some other things to that. What you learn, these right two sections are we're going to talk about the second half of the webinar, and that's what you learn, reflection, interaction, having a focus with the stakeholders, who your customers are, and then having experiential discovery. There's all kinds of power in this step, and most people go right back to their jobs without going from step one to steps 2 and 3. Step 3 is making your results actionable. So that's where I asked you, I may be talking about a topic on this chart, and you may say, you know what? I just need to create a learning plan for my own life. And that's one of the things that's on your to-do list to do. And so, what are some actionable things out of this brief 45 minutes that we're going to spend together? How can you go apply that? How can you get some quick wins? How can you hold yourself accountable? So, I do appreciate the, let me just find this real quick here because there is a very good scripture that goes along this that Mr. Yunt, William Yunt says, Colossians 1:9. He said, we haven't stopped praying for you. We're asking that you may be filled with the knowledge of his will in all wisdom and spiritual understanding. So I've prayed for you by name, Helena D. Sherry, already before this. And so the goal here is that I would equip you with some knowledge. You would go put that to work with some understanding and wisdom and some experiential learning. So Herbert Spencer, a great English philosopher, said the great aim of education is not knowledge, but action. And so to transfer that, James 1:22 says, be a doer and not just a hearer only. All right. This was a testimonial from Angelica, who finished my course in March. She said, everything directly was transferable to my real world. I recommend this for all career stages. All right, let's get to followership. How am I doing on time here? Am I on track? I'm 5 minutes behind my own schedule, but that's all right. So followership, what is it? Don't let this scare you off. This is some research I did over my 7 years of PhD study. I went back 200 years and looked at every leadership style that's been researched, developed, written about. The top half are leadership centric. They're more directive, authoritative. The great man theory is one that says this transformational, charismatic leader, man or woman, is going to run the show, and everybody else is going to be a follower. Martin Luther King, Winston Churchill, those type of people. On the bottom half is follower centric. These are theories that bring together leader and follower. And what we're going to do here, I did a Google search. The size of the ball is how much academic research has been done on each of these. So you can see on the bottom right-hand corner, we're going to delve into this a little bit over these sessions. There hasn't been a lot of research done on it. I've done some, and there are a dozen or so who are really key to these areas. So what we'll talk about today is followership, which you can see has very little research. Here's some definitions of leadership before we get into followership. Leadership is a behavior. Yes. It's a concept, according to Bennis. It's influence. So there's 3 words there that I want to focus on. There's over 1,000 definitions of leadership. We could have a whole one-day class on that. Some other ones, one of the great seminal books on leadership from 1978 is by James McGregor Burns. It's simply called Leadership. It's about politics. If you like politics, you'd really enjoy this book. He said his definition, he gave up. He said it's one of the most observed and least understood phenomena on the earth. But I love this, what he said, one of my favorite definitions. It's a collective, symbiotic relationship between leader and follower. He was one of the first to talk about this 45 years ago, and then nobody did for a couple decades after. So again, you'll see a process here, and then you'll see here is there about an environment. So leadership is a phenomena, it's a relationship. You'll hear it's a process. So it's a lot of different things. Here are the 2 textbooks on leadership that define leadership. Again, you'll see process and you'll see process. You'll see influence. You'll see efforts to achieve goals. Here's my definition. It better be a good one after 7.5 years. I say it's a process and behaviors. It's action and it's a process. So you can put it on paper, but there have to be actions. It's an individual, yes, who's leading. Doesn't have to be a superior always, but they influence, they inspire, they motivate, they develop, they serve followers. So I have the word followers in my definition, but that can also mean peers. You can be a leader to your peers, people who don't report to you. And then I finish up with the why, to achieve a common vision, not just a leader's vision, to achieve goals that are mutually beneficial to leader and follower and the organization. So I won't go through this. I do this in my actual course and dig into this a little bit more. So you see some to-dos: influence, inspiration, motivation. Doesn't mean you have to be an extrovert to do that, but to be able to push those buttons of how you motivate, how you influence. And the way to do that is to understand what your followers need and want, and to develop relationships with them. So this whole concept of shared vision and values, and we'll talk about that, and then having mutually beneficial relationships. So you'll see process, you'll see actions, and then you'll see servanthood in there as well. Now, this is another eye chart again as well, but what it does is it shows you, if you look over on the left side, these are the key research and writings on followership. So you can see most of the dates were early 2000s. Except for Robert Kelly. These are the types of followers. We're not going to have time to go through this, but I cover a lot of these in my self-paced asynchronous course. So if you want to drill down more, there's a lot of very interesting styles here, and I'll recommend to you some books. If I do another one of these sessions and people are interested, I'll probably focus on this middle section of servant leadership, because there's a very close link to servant leadership and then followership, because you're focusing more on the follower than the leader. So here's some definitions of followership, and you guys give me a thumbs up if you're still with me. Elena did her doctorate in executive leadership. Awesome. That's amazing. You know, the last webinar guy that I went to, a lot of these influencers and master classes and stuff, and they said, do not make your graphics look good. It takes away from the message. I totally disagree. Obviously, I want people to watch my course too. And so I want the graphics to be good, and I have to live with them. And so I like color. So here's some definitions with followership. Screen down. Webster, the capacity or willingness to follow. I like that. This one, Barbara Kellerman, she's one of the top 38 leaders in the world on leadership. And I interviewed her in my podcast, but she said followers are subordinates. I don't like that word, but I don't like the word followership either, because it implies exactly what she's saying here. Those who have less power, those who have less authority, they have less influence. So they're therefore usually fall into line. But there's a lot of truth to be said about that. And I talked to Ron Riggio, who came up with the word followership, and he wrote a great book called Art of Followership. And they struggled with that word as an academic community, but said, hey, what else are you going to pick? Subordinate's not a good one. Employee is kind of like, partner. So they just went with it. And it's not a perfect word by any stretch. Robert Kelly, who wrote really the first main book called The Power of Followership, he takes a little bit of a more optimistic take than Dr. Kellerman. People who know what to do without being told. The people who act with intelligence, independence, courage, and a strong sense of ethics. So if you slap those two definitions in front of followers, which do you think they'd prefer? Probably that one. And again, here Rost says process, but he also said it's what followers do. All right, so here's the paradigm that I'm trying to shift. Is how many of you say, I'm going to go take a follower class? It doesn't happen. There's such a focus on leadership. My daughter applied for to get into college, And she had to write 2 paragraphs on leadership. Anything on followership? No, of course not. Hey, I think I'll go register for a follower conference. There really aren't any. There is actually one per year. It was in Nova Scotia this past month. I wish I would have gone, but there really aren't follower conferences because the focus is so much on being independent, getting ahead as a leader. Nothing evil in that, but how about I just ordered a book from a followership guru? You get the point here. Let's make followership a discussion for our performance reviews and our development plans. Let's have a strategic imperative that focuses on developing our followers. What if you have a follower that doesn't want to be a leader? That's okay. I want to be the best follower that I can be. Nothing wrong with that. I'm going to skip this personal story, but it tells a story about a small men's group. These guys, I was leading a small men's Bible study, and I went through my heart started beating at 250 beats a minute. These guys came along my side for 2 months and they were followers or partners, but they became my collaborators. They got me through that time. And so it's really important if you develop these relationships with followers, they'll go to the grave with you. And I've still got followers from my last 3 jobs who text me every week saying, how you doing? And vice versa. All right, I'm going to go through these quick just for sake of time. You already know followers have a great impact. Kelly said they have 80% of the impact on the organization. He doesn't have research to back it up, but I believe it. A follower can be anybody. It doesn't have to be a reporting structure, but a leader must understand the follower's needs, attributes, skills, because leaders are followers more often than they're leaders. In often cases, we're not the president or CEO, so we better learn to be a good follower and learn how our leaders think. Because I don't know about you, but some of the leaders I've worked for, I've learned the most from are the worst leaders on what not to do. So we don't want to be that type of a leader. So how does a follower determine leadership effectiveness? We're not going to have time to go through all of this. I do cover it in my course, but how does a leader determine that? They want to see performance. They want to see competence. They want to see communication. They want to see feedback. Why are you doing what you're doing? They want to see that your actions align with your beliefs, your value, your worldview, that you're authentic, that you're trustable, respectable, that you're willing to sacrifice, and that you care for your people. All right, so the research on followership, very quickly. Really, the first formal theory was just 10 years ago by Uhl Bien. So there's 716 articles on it, 52 different measures. There's 2 approaches to followership. One is co-construction. That's where you're developing a plan or a vision with your followers, with your team. They're a part of it. It's called shared vision. That's co-construction. Co-production is you've done maybe more of the development, and then they will help you with the execution. And there's a time and a place for both of those. So here's the growing research. Just over the last 5 years, you'll see a step up in followership. So you're getting ahead of the curve here by hearing some of this. So a few key quotes from key researchers. Great book on learning by Senge. He said, there's nothing more powerful than shared vision. If you get it on a placard or a PowerPoint for your teams and they're not bought in, they can't memorize it. They didn't say, hey, I helped to develop that. It's not powerful. It's just slogan. Leaders need followers. Followers need leaders, Burns said. Organizations consist not just of the leader, but of the follower and purpose. Now, Kellerman says context instead of purpose. So that's true too. A follower doesn't mean a subordinate. That's why I don't like that word. But if you as a leader can capture the heart and minds, you will lead the deer to the water. And the way to do that is followership, by focusing on them. You will affect their feelings, their thoughts, their behaviors. It's not manipulation. It can be. It's psychology. It's philosophy. Good leaders empower. So here's a 360 that I went through with my followers just to show you I practice what I preach. Is if you haven't done a 360, put that on your action item list. You ask anonymously, what's your team? And this one you can see I had my direct reports, my peers, give me ratings on a 0 to 4. And so Fortunately, this has been the case. I've done 3 of these throughout my career, but it gives me honest and candid feedback, and the people know that I'm going to use it. And I actually come back to them as a team and say, okay, you gave me a 3.6 on People Grower, and I drilled down into the questions, and there's one that I really struggled with. And so I'll put that before them and say, I want you to hold me accountable on being present in meetings, not looking at my phone during meetings. So if you want to take this seriously, do a 360. That's my testimony. So some issues with the current paradigm, like we talked about. This is from a study, a Gallup study, University of Nebraska. Only 26% of leaders say exactly what they mean. So we don't practice what we preach, and they know that. They see that. This one is a stunning one to me. And if you can do anything different as a leader, it's to involve your team and make them feel like an owner. Having those one-on-ones every week, whether you need it or not, taking someone to coffee, developing a relationship, having them give you input on a visit and have a brainstorming session for what your goals ought to be for the second half of the year. Here's another one. Leaders not willing to admit their mistakes. 3/4 of leaders say that. All right, real shift here. We're down to the last about 10 minutes or so. Here's the characteristics of most admired leaders. So here's the traits you want to exemplify. A great study. Kouzes and Postner are a couple of my favorites. You can just see here what some of those traits are, and I cover this in my training as well. On the other hand, to be a good follower, what traits should you exemplify? And I go through what the textbooks say, but here's some things that I have to say. Be willing to appreciate your boss. Challenge flawed plans. Resist. Be a courageous follower. There's great books on how to do that. Provide upward coaching and counseling. Understanding your leader's expectations. Boy, I've had to coach a couple of my followers on this recently. They don't understand what I want. So having those regular check-ins to make sure they do, now they want to have those because they bring me a solution that they know I actually wanted instead of guessing, instead of bring me a rock. And then having your followers bring you solutions and not just problems. That's a training issue. That's a teaching issue. Staying informed as a follower. Sharing information regularly. I used to do a weekly report for my leader, even though they didn't require it. Say, here's what I'm working on. Sometimes they read it, sometimes they didn't. Honesty, authenticity, honest feedback, and then supporting your leader when they want to deploy something that's critical, knowing what's important to them, and then being a strategic leader for them. All right, everybody with me? How much time do you guys have? Just put it in the chat how much time you have, because I want to be sensitive. I said 45 minutes. I booked this for an hour. You may be off watching Survivor right now. Okay. So if you guys will give me 20 minutes, I'll take it. Here is one thought. Jesus didn't say, come take my leadership development course. He said, come follow me. He didn't have a training booklet. What was most of his training? If you watch that great show called The Chosen, and even if you're not a Christian or believer, it's a great series because you can see the dynamics of how he dealt with his disciples. It was experiential learning. It was shadowing. It was mentoring. And he lived it, and then he sent them out. He didn't just expect to send them out. Now, sometimes he asked them to do things, and they failed, and he came back, and they weren't afraid to deal with him because they knew he was going to forgive and forget. When we interview candidates, do we check their resume just for leadership traits, or do we look for followership? And then does a follower serve the leader, or a leader serve the follower? And it's really both. And this was just something I thought about this past week. When we raise children or even dogs, do you raise them for those dozens of years, raising them to be leaders or followers? Usually it's stand in line, answer the door, don't be rude. We're teaching them to be followers. And then all of a sudden, when they get in the workplace, we don't talk about followership anymore. We just talk about developing leaders, which is great, but we want to develop good followers because 80% of people are followers. All right. Shared vision. I talk about this in one of my course sessions, how valuable it is, the power and research on it. Here's the books that I'm not going to go through that I would recommend to you, and I'll send out this recording afterwards. The Different Leadership Styles from Robert Kelly. It's important to know when you deal with your 20 people, D, what kind of a follower they are. You know the passive one who doesn't want to volunteer for anything. You may know the pragmatist who's very practical, but I've even created a spreadsheet when I coach people and say, go down your list and say which type are these people. So that's the power of followership. Riggio and Chalf, this is my favorite book. If you only get one book on followership, he talks about 5 styles of followers: the sheep, the yes people, alienated, pragmatics, and the stars. And usually leaders, we don't have a lot of star followers, unfortunately. And then Ira Shaloff, the courageous followership, talks about having courage as a follower, how to do that. And you'll see a lot of the, in our society, followers are standing up to our government. And so there's some real positives about that. How you do it is a whole nother topic. And then I really appreciated Barbara Kellerman talking about her types of followers: isolators, bystanders, participants, activists, and diehards. All right, so far I've given you a blow-by-blow on leadership methods and this model. I want to focus for the last few minutes, if it's okay, on possible next steps, okay? Linda, I talked to this week. I think you may have saw this in the leadership invite. She helped me around the leadership table. She's what I call the servant leader. I haven't worked for her in 14 years, but I talked to her this week and I said, hey, I'm doing teaching on followership and servant leadership. Do you think you fit into that category? And she said, I don't even know what you're talking about. She had never heard of those two concepts. And I gave her a tool, which I'm going to give you guys complimentary today. I'll send it out to you afterwards. Is what is a servant leader? And I created an acrostic that describes that. I sent it to her and she said, oh my gosh, I am, according to the research, a servant leader, but there's some things I need to work on. Well, if you mix that leadership style with this concept called lean, agile, Six Sigma, a guy named Dave at Raytheon helped me to develop this concept of sprints. It's not copyrighted. It's out there. The Japanese, Chinese have used this. Corporate America has used it for a long time. But this idea of leadership sprints fixes problems quickly. So if you get out your list of 5 to 7 things that I ask you, if you've gotten anything out of this that you are being challenged to do, what I'd ask you to do is pick one of those out, and we're going to focus on it. And if you've never heard of this concept called flow, once you get into something that you're passionate about, it's called finding your flow. This is your inner purpose, your optimal experience. You find personal satisfying. It's a great book, very philosophical, but it's where you're in a position where you're involved so much that you don't even look at the clock. You're so absorbed, time flies, you're energized, you're concentrated. So how do you get your employees into flow? Because guess what? They enter flow, and I won't talk to you all the research about flow, 60% of the time if they're given the right challenging position. And yet they only enter flow when they're watching TV or eating out, something that you think would be preferential 20% of the time. So if you find the right place for your followers to plug in and you train them correctly and you use this shared reciprocal approach, they will enter flow and perform for you within 15 days. I know you'll see that change. I've done it. So this whole concept of experiential learning, if you haven't tried it or done it, there's so much power in it. 81% of students in this study, recent study, desired more experiential learning, but when people get training, they only get 30%. So they want it. And yet, when you look at this middle study, were students successful? They were in 2/3 of the steps for these particular tasks in a medical field for experience when they took experiential learning. But when they took the old school traditional learning, this is a medical survey, so you can relate to it, Helena, but only 37% when they just read out of a textbook. So there's power in that. So my ask would be, as you consider, I've got a 5-step process. Can I spend this last, how much time do we have? This last 5 to 10 minutes talking to you about this framework. Is that okay? I won't oversell it, I promise. If it's not for you, it's not for you, and you can use it for free. You guys good? If I can get a yes or a thumbs up, I want to see one more time. Sherry says yes. Dee says yes. Elena with a thumbs up. 3 for 3. What do you know? All right. So this is a 5-step process that utilizes a 1-hour experiential learning sprint. Now, I call it a skill solver tool. Who cares what you call it? But it will help you to solve your pressing leadership problems. So as we've gone through followership, those 5 to 7 things, if you can pick 1 or 2 of those out and start to think in terms of this framework I'm getting ready to show you, it's not a new concept, okay? I've repositioned a problem-solving process along with Kaizen and Lean, and it's a 5-step process, but I go through it in a 1-hour sprint, and you can do it too. So there's no magic to it. It's just having a process to do that, to define that problem. So if my problem was, gosh, you've talked about all this, and I realize I'm not rewarding and recognize my team, that's the problem. The problem is I'm not motivating and influencing my team by rewarding and recognizing them. So the next step would be, okay, what are some ideas to do? What do I want the future state to look like? Well, I want to have the best recognition program in my company. And I want my people to love working for me like I loved working for Linda. I've had 8 bosses in my life, and only one did I look forward going into work for. Are you that boss? I wasn't always that boss, but I believe I am today because of what I've done in the studies and putting those into practice. So what are your SMART goals? I cover that in my training. You probably know what those are, but setting those goals around this problem. So this particular problem would be a recognition and reward retention program, for instance. So then I'm going to identify, why do I have those problems? Well, it might be the culture of the company. It might be because I've been an absent leader. It might be because I don't have the knowledge to go do that. So get a team together to help you. Read a book on it, go through training, but then get your team to help you. Put together a small tiger team to say, okay, how can we do better at learning, retention, recognition? Get somebody who's in HR, who they do this for a living. Go have coffee with them for 30 minutes. Come up with some solutions. And then the process is to go through a voting process with your team, or you can just be the only voter. It makes it quicker. But then to implement and measure your system. So this is the process I use in this 1-hour sprint. So this was an example of I went back through my own 1-hour webinar here, and I said, here's the list of 9 things that I said I was just going to do as a result of Doug's webinar today. Okay, I'm going to go rank my group's problems and identify training for them. Okay, I need training for my team. I'm going to go read a servant leadership book. Okay, great. Go do it. Do a 360-degree feedback if you haven't done it. Go do a self-assessment. I can walk you through it. You can do it yourself. Develop a mission and a shared vision with your team if you've never done it before. And then brainstorm a list. The ones in green, you can go do a sprint on. The other ones, just go do them. So I just made this list out for myself to say, here's where I could consider doing a sprint. And this was the one I just gave you an example. I'm going to go develop a reward and recognition plan for my team. Okay. So you take that one thing and then you go run it through this process, and you can do it in a 1-hour meeting. Now you'll have to do some pre-work and some outside work. You can do it. You can have your team do it. I will do it for you, whatever you want to do. And then out of that, I've created, and here's the coaching part in me that's coming out. Okay. So I've got an 8-page document that's called the Skill Solver Solution Set, and it walks you through this process with questions and in what order to do them. And I can help you with that or not. So that's totally up to you. All right. So that's the process. And Sakshi just went through the course and said, hey, again, real world experience if you want to become a better leader. So these are the steps. If you want to do it with me, if you want to do it alone, you made it through the webinar. Congratulations. I know I talked fast. I had 8 hours of material that I got down to one. If you want to have a call with me, there's no charge for it. Just send me an email. You know how to get a hold of me. I'm on LinkedIn, and I'll set up a call to say, hey, you covered a lot of stuff. Can we work together, or can you just give me some advice? I'm glad to do it. Okay. You don't have to pay me anything. If you do want to work on a coaching basis, you can register. We'll have a very detailed strategy call. I will conduct the blitz for you. I'll take the notes. I'll help you put this thing into effect. You can do it with one problem or three problems, and then we'll wrap it up with a results call. I'll help build you an actionable plan. Okay. So if you want to do either of these, click on the enroll. You can see on the bottom here, it says DougHagedorn.com. Select the mini webinar, and I'll send this out to you guys, and then you can choose. All right. So here's the funny part. You guys still with me? This is when I would have hung up by now. You guys still here? You're still here. All right. Okay. That's good. Okay. So I've been through so many webinars that want me to spend $5,000 or $25,000 for their master class. It has been stunning. And the advice they've told me is you need to ask $5,000 for this. And I'm going, absolutely not. I'm here as a man of character to help people. But what I did is I went through everything I'm willing to offer you and the price that it's valued at. So these are the things, okay? I would have a webinar, a personal followership webinar. We can do 90 minutes or 2 hours just to go through followership with your team so they can learn some of these things. I do that for you. We can have a one-on-one session just with you, and I can work with your team. So this offer is a group offer. And then I would have a facilitated session with your group to walk you through to see how a sprint is done, to do it for you, or you can do it and I'll just coach and help, whatever you want. You'd have personal access to me. We'll do 3 live webinars with you and your team on 3 topics of your choice. I'll do all the prep. I'll do all the teaching. We can turn them into sprints if you want to, and we'll have 2 check-in accountabilities. That for the low, low price of $3,200. That's where I would leave right now. Okay. So, but these guys really wanted me to ask 5,000 for it. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And what I will do is offer it for $497. If you go look at the leadership research, it shows that I could easily get that for just 2 hours of my work, period. And you'd be getting quite a bit more than that. Okay. That's if you want to do something as a team. If you want to do something as an individual, and what I'll also do are these bonuses. I'll give you this transformation tool, that 8-pager to help you walk through how you do a sprint. There's a picture of it. I'll give you the servant leadership attributes 1-pager. I'm going to give you that anyway for free. I'm going to send that out to you because I want everybody to be a servant leader. I will mail you a free paperback copy of the book I wrote 10 years ago about a leadership legacy for your future, your family, your faith, and your finances. And I will have a one-on-one session to help you complete your plan. So all that's about $4,000. Again, $497 for the group, for a group of 4 people, or as an individual. Here we go. Drum roll. Same bonuses, 1 less meeting, all worth $1,500 for $197. Or you can just go online and get my class for $59, or you can do nothing. And so those are 30-day money back guarantee. I want you to be happy. This is the free document that I'm going to give you. This is based on research. What is servant leadership? What are the attributes you should aspire to be based on the research? Those are the acrostic for the word serve. And then in the middle, this is my section. You can adopt it or not, but this is my biblical worldview. How I bring that into play here is that there's power in leadership when you have God helping. I'll be honest with you. And so Jesus came to serve, not to be leader, but to be servant and slave to all, it said. So that's my goal. I hope this helped you some. Can you give me a thumbs up or yes or no in the chat if that was helpful. And again, here's how to enroll. All right. Did I lose anybody? All right, that's it. So thank you guys. Sorry I took the hour. I appreciate it. I hope you can use this. I will be praying for you, all three of you, because I know you have a giant task, but know that nothing is too difficult and you can do this. And let me know if you want to set up a complimentary time. I'd be glad to do that. All right, I'll send the recording out to you and the servant leadership acrostic PDF for your usage. All right. Thank you.